They said the twins were born on the same night, but one of them didn't breathe until sunrise. And from that moment on, nothing about them ever made sense. The Mississippi plantation woke before dawn, fog crawling over the fields, silence hanging like a warning. And in that silence, two newborn cries cut through the dark. Except one cry never came. The midwives swore they watched the smaller twin lie still, cold, gray, unmoving, long enough that they whispered a prayer over her tiny body, long enough that one of them placed a cloth across her face, long enough that they called her dead. But when the first ray of sunlight touched the cabin wall, she gasped. She twitched. She opened her eyes, and every woman in that room stepped back in terror. Nobody could explain it. Nobody dared to. Not in a place where superstition moved louder than truth, and not in a time when enslaved people weren't allowed to question anything, not even miracles. The master heard the story by noon, and instead of fear, he felt excitement. Twins were rare. Twins were valuable. But twins like these, especially the silent one who rose from death, were something else entirely. He ordered they never be separated, not even for a moment, not even to sleep, not even to pray. Two sisters bound by blood, and now by something darker. People said the girls grew fast, too fast, walking before most children crawled, talking in whispers that adults couldn't understand, laughing at shadows nobody else could see. They knew things they shouldn't know. They spoke names no one had taught them. They predicted storms before the sky even shifted. By the time they were 5, the overseer refused to stand near them alone. By the time they were 7, field workers made the sign of the cross when they walked by. By the time they were 10, even the master's wife locked her door at night. But the strangest part, the part no one ever forgot, the girl who was born silent, the one who didn't breathe until sunrise, she never blinked. Not once. Not in 10 years. And everyone on the plantation knew whatever brought her back never left. If you want next, just don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. The twins had stayed silent for 10 years. But the night they finally opened their mouths, something ancient woke with them. The years passed, but the fear never did. Not for the masters, not for the enslaved, not for anyone who crossed paths with the twins. They moved like shadows, silent, synchronized, two small figures gliding through the plantation as if guided by something unseen. No one dared speak to them. No one dared touch them. No one dared even whisper their names unless the sun was high and the fields were noisy enough to drown out bad spirits. But everything changed the night the storm rolled in. It wasn't a normal storm. It was the kind that made old men shake. The kind that made animals hide before the first drop of rain fell. The kind that crawled across Mississippi like a warning from something older than the land itself. Rain hit first, then the wind, then the thunder, and then a scream. Not a scream of pain, a scream of fear. A scream so sharp the entire plantation froze in place. It came from the twin who had never blinked. The one who rose from death, the one who hadn't spoken a single word in 10 long, haunted years. She screamed, and the world outside went cold. The master ran from the big house. The overseer stopped mid-stride. Even the dogs dropped low and whimpered. Everyone gathered outside the quarters as lightning ripped across the sky. Inside the cabin, the twins stood facing each other. Not crying, not afraid. Just staring, as if listening to something no human ear could hear. Then the stronger twin, the one who always shielded her sister, opened her mouth and spoke. Her voice was wrong, too deep, too hollow, too ancient. "She's coming," she said. The master pushed inside. "Who?" he demanded. "Who's coming?" Both girls turned toward him in perfect, unnatural unison. The smaller twin, silent her entire life, blinked once, slowly, and whispered, "Our mother." Lightning crashed again, the room shook, and the master's face went white. Because he knew they weren't talking about any mother he had ever met. They thought the twins were the strange ones, but that was before they realized something much darker was coming for them. The cabin went silent after those two words, "Our mother." Not a whisper, not a breath. Nothing moved. The master tried to regain control, tried to force authority back into his voice, but his hands shook, his jaw trembled, and the twins just watched him. Two sets of eyes, one living, one born dead, both unblinking now. The storm howled through the cracks of the cabin walls. Thunder rolled so close it rattled the floorboards, but still, the girls didn't flinch. The older enslaved women stepped back, clutching their aprons. They knew stories the master didn't. Stories about twins, stories about spirits who watched over children born in darkness, stories about mothers who never stopped searching for what was taken from them. The master didn't believe in those stories. Not until tonight. He swallowed hard. "What mother?" he asked again, his voice thin, his feet inching backward. The stronger twin closed her eyes. The weaker twin opened hers wider, and at the same moment, as if sharing one thought, they whispered, "She's near." Then it happened. A sudden drop in temperature so sharp the lantern flames shrank. The air thickened, breaths turned visible. A cold no Mississippi summer had ever known crept across the room. Outside, the wind stopped. Not slowed, stopped. As if the entire night held its breath. Then came the footsteps. Slow. Crunching. Careful. Moving through wet dirt toward the cabin door. The master stepped back, hand trembling near the pistol on his belt. The overseer whispered, "No. No, that ain't human." One of the women began praying under her breath, voice cracking with every word. The footsteps grew louder, closer, heavier, until they stopped, right outside the thin wooden door. Every lantern in the cabin flickered, every shadow stretched long. The twins lifted their heads at the exact same second, their eyes glowing with a strange reflection, as if something bright was standing directly behind the door. And then the smaller twin smiled, the first smile of her life, a cold, crooked, unnatural smile. "She found us," she whispered. The door handle began to turn. The moment the door handle turned, everyone knew, whoever stood outside was not meant to walk this earth. The metal handle shook once, soft, slow, testing the wood, testing the fear. No one breathed, no one moved. Even the storm outside seemed to wait. The master raised his pistol with a trembling hand. He aimed at the door. But the twins stepped forward, right in front of the barrel. He whispered, "Move!" They didn't. He shouted, "Move!" They didn't blink. The smaller twin, the one who had died at birth, tilted her head. "It won't help you," she said, her voice gentle, almost sad. The master lowered the gun without realizing he'd done it. Then the handle turned again, this time harder, like whatever stood on the other side had grown impatient. A low hum filled the cabin, a vibration. The floorboards groaned. The lantern flames arched sideways as if pulled toward the door. One of the women whispered, "Lord have mercy, it's her!" Another woman grabbed the nearest child and hid her face. The overseer backed into a corner, his lips white, his knees shaking so hard they knocked together. The twins walked closer, bare feet silent on the cold floor. Their shadows stretched unnaturally long, reaching the door before their bodies did. The stronger twin placed her small hand on the wood. The weaker twin placed her hand right beside it. Their palms gave off a faint glow, like heat, but cold. They whispered together, "She wants to see us." The door creaked, slowly, painfully, splitting open as if resisting whatever stood behind it. And then a figure appeared in the gap. Not fully seen, not fully hidden. A silhouette of a woman, tall, thin, wrapped in something that didn't move with the wind, like fabric that didn't belong to this world. Her hair hung long and dripping, but it wasn't water. It slid down her shoulders like ink pooling on the porch before disappearing into the cracks. Her face was blocked by the shadows, but her voice was unmistakable. "My daughters," she crooned, a sound too soft, too sweet, too wrong, like lullabies sung in graveyards. The twins stepped forward. The figure extended her hand long and pale, nails blackened at the tips. Reaching for them, everyone else fell to their knees, because no one needed to be told what she was. She wasn't living, she wasn't dead, but she had come back for her children, and she wasn't leaving without them. If you want next, just don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. The woman at the door didn't ask for her daughters. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She simply opened her hand and let the darkness choose for them. The cabin was frozen. No wind. No breath. No heartbeat strong enough to rise above the silence staring back at them. The woman's hand remained outstretched, long fingers trembling softly, her shadow stretching across the floor like a living thing, thin, hungry, reaching. The twins looked at each other. For a moment, they weren't strange. They weren't feared. They weren't whispered about in cotton fields. They were just two little girls staring at the figure calling them home. The stronger twin, the one who'd always protected her sister, swallowed hard. Her voice cracked when she said, "We knew she'd come." The smaller twin didn't speak. She just stepped forward, drawn to the shadow like she'd been waiting her whole life. The master lunged. "No!" he shouted. But the moment he touched the girl's arm, the air snapped. His hand slapped back as if burnt. A welt formed instantly. Red, swollen, shaped like a handprint. Not a child's, a woman's. The figure outside tilted her head, not angry, not kind, just aware. The master stumbled backward. "What are you?" he hissed. Her voice slid across the room like cold breath on glass. "They're beginning," she said. "And you're ending." The women in the cabin cried out. One fainted. Another crossed herself over and over, whispering prayers too fast to understand. The twins took another step toward the door, their eyes glowing faintly, blue at first, then white, then something colorless like moonlight poured into water. The stronger twin turned to the room, tears in her eyes. "I don't want to leave," she whispered, "but she's been calling us since the night we were born." Thunder rolled above them. The woman's silhouette shifted, as if growing taller, stronger, more defined. Her voice softened. "Come home." The smaller twin reached for her hand. Her tiny fingers hovered inches away. But just as she touched the cold, pale skin, a man burst through the cabin door behind them. Muddy boots, wild eyes, a shotgun clutched in his hands. "Get away from them!" he roared. The figure at the door snapped her head toward him, and for the first time, the twins' mother showed her face. Everyone screamed. If you want next, just don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. They said if you ever saw her face, you wouldn't survive the memory. But that night, everyone in that cabin looked straight into it. The shotgun-wielding man stood frozen in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat, mud splattered up his legs, eyes wide enough to show the whites even in the dark. No one knew how he got past the storm, how he reached the cabin without being heard, how he walked right up to the thing at the door and lived long enough to shout. But the moment he spoke, she turned. The twins' mother, if she could even be called that, shifted her head in a slow, bone-cracking motion. The shadows peeled away from her face like they'd been hiding something terrible, and what lay beneath wasn't human. Her skin looked stretched too tight, gray and thin like paper left in the sun. Her cheeks hollowed, her jaw slightly unhinged as if it had been broken long before this night. Her eyes, God, her eyes, they were wide, glassy, and empty, except for the faint glow swirling inside them like candlelight trapped under ice. The man with the shotgun took one look, choked on his breath, and dropped to his knees. His gun hit the floorboards with a dull thud. "Don't look!" one of the women cried, but it was too late. Everyone already had. The figure stepped forward. Her feet didn't touch the porch. She floated just an inch above it. Drifting. Wrong. The twins didn't flinch, didn't tremble, didn't hide. Instead, they reached for her, as if that misshapen, ghostly face belonged to the woman who tucked them into bed at night. But the man on his knees found his voice again, barely, broken. "Stay back," he whispered. "Please, stay back." The woman, the thing, tilted her head. Her jaw shifted with a crack, and something like a smile crept across her face. It wasn't comforting, it wasn't maternal. It was hunger wearing a mother's shape. She extended her long blackened fingers toward the girls, and the room's temperature dropped again. This time so violently that frost formed on the window glass. The stronger twin squeezed her sister's hand. "Don't be scared," she whispered. "She's here for us." But then, out of nowhere, the man on the floor lunged forward and grabbed both girls by their arms. "Run!" he shouted, voice cracking, face pale, hand shaking. The twins gasped. The room erupted into screams. The woman at the door let out a sound that didn't belong to this world. A wail, a shriek, a mother's grief sharpened into rage. The lanterns blew out. The door slammed shut, and everything went black. If you want next, just don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. When the lights went out, they thought they were trapped with the twins' mother. But the truth was far worse. Something else had come inside with them. Total darkness swallowed the cabin. Not moonless night darkness, not storm cloud darkness. This was thicker, heavier, like ink pouring through the air. Screams echoed, hands grabbed blindly, feet stumbled across the floorboards. Someone shouted for a lantern. Someone else cried for God. Someone whispered a name they hadn't spoken since a funeral decades earlier. The only thing anyone could hear was breathing, but not human breathing. Wet, deep, ragged, slow. The kind of breathing that didn't come from lungs. The kind that came from something that had waited a long time to be let inside. The man who had grabbed the twins held tighter in the pitch black. "Stay with me," he whispered, but the girls didn't respond. He shook their arms. "Girls, stay!" Nothing. His hand slid across empty air. The twins were gone. A woman screamed so loud it tore her voice. Another fainted. Someone else began pounding against the wall, desperate to find a door they couldn't see. Then, a spark. A trembling hand struck flint against metal. A tiny ember. A glow. For a second, the cabin lit just enough to show one thing. The twins, standing in the center of the room, holding hands, eyes glowing white, faces blank, hair floating slightly, like the air around them wasn't the same as everyone else's. And behind them, a shadow. Not the mother's shadow. This one was bigger, broader, stretching across the walls like a creature rising from the floor, eyes glowing like embers in the dark, watching, waiting. The spark died. Darkness again. Then a whisper. Soft, small. The stronger twin's voice cut through them all. "She's not alone." The man who had tried to save them backed toward the wall. "What do you mean? What else came in here?" Lightning flashed outside. For one split second, the entire room lit up, and everyone saw it. A tall, twisted figure standing in the corner, arms too long, torso bent wrong, head cocked sideways, mouth stretched unnaturally wide, like it was smiling at the chaos. When the darkness returned, the room exploded into screams. The smaller twin's voice cut through them all. "She didn't come for us. She came for him." Every head turned blindly toward the man who had interfered, the one who had grabbed the twins, the one who had shouted for them to run. The cabin went silent, silent enough to hear his heartbeat. And then, from the corner, something moved. Slow, deliberate, hungry. They thought the twins' mother was the monster. They were wrong. The real terror was waiting. Inside the shadows, watching every heartbeat. The man froze, every muscle locked, every breath caught in his throat. He couldn't see it fully, but he could feel it. Cold, heavy, moving with intent. The twins didn't flinch. They simply stared, hands still clasped, eyes glowing white in the darkness, waiting. The shadow in the corner shifted, stretched, breathed, and let out a sound, half growl, half whisper, like the forest itself had come alive to watch them die. The man took a step back. His boot hit the floorboards, a loud crack. The sound seemed to fuel the thing. It moved faster now, closer. Then the smaller twin spoke, her voice calm, almost bored. "It wants you." The man screamed, but the sound didn't fill the room. The shadow was already upon him. He could see its long arms reaching, stretching further than physics should allow. Its fingers, thin, blackened, tipped with claws, snatched the air around him. He swung his arms, grabbed anything. Nothing, only empty space. The stronger twin's voice rang out, "Don't help him. No one can." Lightning cracked through the windows. For a brief second, the shadow's face became visible. Not human, not alive. eyes like pits of nothing, mouth twisted in a grin that stretched impossibly wide, a face made to terrify, made to consume. Then it lunged. The man fell backward, screaming, his arms flailing, but he never touched the creature. It hung in the air like gravity had forgotten him, and when the lightning faded, he was gone. Silence. Absolute. Only the twins remained. The women and overseers cowered in corners, shaking, unable to move, unable to even cry. The small twin tilted her head. The larger twin whispered, "It will not touch us. Not yet, but it will not leave." Rain pounded the roof above. Wind shrieked through the cracks. The cabin itself seemed alive, breathing, watching, waiting. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, the shadows pulsed. And the twins stood calm in the eye of it all, silent rulers of the darkness, now unleashed. And the small, unblinking twin smiled for the first time since sunrise of her birth. If you want next, just don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. For years, everyone feared the twins, but no one knew the truth. The secret they carried would change everything forever. The cabin fell silent after the shadow disappeared, or at least they thought it had. Outside, the storm continued to scream. Inside, only the twins moved. The older twin whispered something under her breath. The smaller twin nodded once, eyes glowing, unblinking, unmoving, like time itself paused around them. The master, if he had survived the last encounter, was nowhere to be seen. The overseer huddled against a wall. The women cowered in corners, afraid to even breathe. And the twins? They walked to the center of the room, hands still joined, silence between them heavier than any scream before. "You were born for this," the older twin said softly. "Not for fields, not for cotton, not for fear." The smaller twin tilted her head. "I remember the night," she said. "The night she came, before we even opened our eyes." A shadow flickered on the wall. A memory? A warning? They didn't flinch. They had always walked between worlds, between life and death, between fear and power. The women whispered prayers no one remembered learning. The overseer's knees knocked together, and outside, the storm seemed to hush just enough for the words to echo. "Every soul that dies here," the older twin continued, "is marked, and every soul that stays belongs to us." The small twin lifted her hand. A finger pointed at the corner where the shadow had vanished. A faint glow rose from the floorboards, shapes, patterns, symbols that no living person could read. Symbols older than Mississippi itself. The master's voice, or what was left of it, echoed faintly from somewhere. He begged, he pleaded, but the twins ignored him. They didn't care. Because this wasn't about him. This wasn't about anyone else. It was about them. And the secret they carried since birth. A secret that no one, not a single soul on the plantation, could ever explain. The twins clasped hands tighter. The smaller twin smiled again, a smile both beautiful and terrifying. And in that instant, everyone knew, whatever lived in them, whatever survived the impossible, it wasn't over. it never would be. Everything the plantation feared, everything whispered about in dark corners, all of it led to this night, the night the twins revealed their final secret. The storm had passed, but the air was heavy still, thick with what had come and what would never leave. The twins stood together, hands clasped, eyes glowing faintly in the dim dawn. No one dared move. No one dared speak. Even the wind held its breath. The older twin looked at her sister. She whispered, "Are you ready?" The smaller twin nodded. A smile curved her lips, chilling and calm. The master, if he still had the courage, tried to step forward. His legs shook, his heart pounded, but his body betrayed him. "Where are you going?" he demanded, his voice cracking, faltering. The twins didn't answer. They never had, not fully. The older twin lifted a hand. The symbols in the floorboards glowed brighter. Shadows stretched across the room like living fingers. And then, slowly, the shadows began to rise. The smaller twin whispered again, "It's time." Before anyone could react, they were gone. Not running, not hiding, simply vanished. The room went cold. Silence swallowed the plantation. Even the birds outside fell quiet. No footprints, no signs, just the lingering glow of the symbols fading slowly, and a feeling that something ancient had finally claimed its own. The overseer collapsed. The women wept. The master stared at the spot where the twins had been. But he knew it was useless. The twins had never been ordinary, not alive in the normal sense, not bound by human rules. They had walked between worlds since the night one of them was born dead. And now they had returned to where they belonged. Every whispered rumor, every fearful glance, every superstition about the twins, it was true. And the final, horrifying truth? No one on that plantation would ever see them again, except for those who dared to enter the shadows they left behind. Those brave or foolish enough to follow might just learn the rest of their secret. The cabin remained silent. The storm clouds broke. Sunlight touched the fields. But deep in the shadows, something waited, watching and remembering. The twins' secret was never meant to be explained.